Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are on edge. Harry and Meghan stepped out separately in New York, going their separate ways. Harry went one way, Meghan went the other way. I mean, it was not a huge surprise.
Meghan Markle standing there preaching about children's safety online is like Harvey Weinstein advocating for women's rights.
An insider from the Humanitarian Awards just leaked something no one saw coming. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's private jet request was flatly denied. No discussion, no exceptions, just a single word, no.
Again, I have to be careful what I say, but it's really quite sad.
But what happened next inside their Manhattan suite left even their own team speechless. For the first time, the royal rebels were told they weren't special, and it didn't go over well. It was supposed to be Meghan's night of redemption, a carefully choreographed return to the spotlight. The suite at the Park Hyatt buzzed with stylists, PR agents, and photographers rehearsing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Meghan stood by the mirror, adjusting her gown for the 5th time, whispering about camera angles and lighting, while Harry, pacing by the window, stared at the glittering skyline like it had betrayed him. The tension was thick, almost cinematic. One side of the room obsessed over optics, the other burning with anger.
See her face. You get here, mate. But on stage, when they knew everyone was filming on their mobile phones and taking pictures, it got even worse.
Then the call came. A quiet assistant handed Meghan the phone. Her expression changed instantly. The organizers had refused their private jet request. No explanation, no compromise. If you were in charge of the event, would you have given them the private jet or made the same call? Be honest. Drop your opinion below. Meghan froze, the practiced smile slipping away. Harry's jaw tightened, fists clenched. To him, it wasn't just logistics. It was humiliation. To her, it was unthinkable. After all, what's a duchess without her grand entrance? Inside that suite, the illusion cracked. The charity gala they'd planned to treat as their triumphant comeback suddenly turned into a quiet reminder. The world doesn't bow anymore. But that was only the beginning. The official story was simple. The Sussexes would attend the Humanitarian Awards to honor their global charitable contributions. The invitation alone was supposed to silence critics. Proof that Meghan and Harry were still relevant, still celebrated, still the couple the world once adored.
Body language. My God, no amount of PR spin is going to deal with that.
But inside that hotel suite, the truth looked very different. Meghan wasn't preparing for a humanitarian event. She was staging a coronation. Every detail had to scream Hollywood royalty. The gown was handpicked to outshine everyone else in the room. The team rehearsed every step, every camera angle, every flashbulb moment. For Meghan, humility was just another aesthetic.
Biggest absurdity of this whole thing was just how over-the-top perfect everything has to be around her.
One she wore when it matched the dress code. Harry watched from across the room, arms folded, jaw locked. The same man who once said he wanted a simpler life now found himself buried under his wife's brand strategy. When she asked if the lighting was flattering enough, he didn't answer. When she reminded him to smile naturally, he didn't look up. He'd played the part for years, and he was tired. Behind closed doors, their dynamic wasn't partnership, it was pressure. Meghan chasing applause that never came, and Harry realizing he'd traded a crown for a script he didn't believe in.
Maybe he is still very upset over her stunt over in Paris. I can't imagine that didn't go unnoticed by him.
By the time their publicist entered with the night's schedule, the air in the suite was already fractured. Meghan spoke in sound bites. Harry muttered under his breath. Their smiles had become masks, polished, empty, and cracking. And then came her line, the one that made him finally lose his composure. Tonight, she said, we remind them who we are. Harry's voice cut through the room, low, bitter, unfiltered. No, Meghan, they already know who we are. That's the problem. In that moment, the royal fairy tale didn't just dim, it burned. But the night hadn't even begun. When the news broke inside that Manhattan suite, it wasn't just a logistical setback, it was a mirror. And what stared back at them wasn't royalty, it was ego. Meghan's expression didn't show shock, it showed disbelief. The kind of disbelief only someone used to endless approval could feel. The rejection wasn't about the jet, it was about the realization that her name no longer guaranteed a yes. In the span of a few minutes, the perfectly curated illusion began to crumble. Assistants froze, stylists looked away, and the woman who once commanded red carpets suddenly looked like she was standing on one that had been rolled back.
The simmering tension between the duplicitous Duke and his facelift-enhanced wife. Here's the red carpet arrival.
Hey, Harry, what are you upstairs?
Harry's fury burned differently. It wasn't theatrical, it was silent, simmering. Every flashbulb, every speech, every orchestrated headline that had once felt like purpose now felt like parody. He had fled one palace only to build another, this time one built on Meghan's vanity and his own guilt. For years, they'd preached compassion while flying private, demanded privacy while selling confessionals, preached freedom while chained to relevance. The private jet denial was more than a refusal, it was poetic justice. Outside their bubble, organizers saw what they couldn't, a pair who'd turned philanthropy into performance, sincerity into strategy. They weren't denied because they were unsafe. They were denied because they'd become the contradiction the event wanted to avoid. In that hotel room, silence did what the tabloids never could. It exposed them. Two people addicted to attention, stripped of their script. No photographers, no red carpet, no curated sympathy. Just two ex-royals watching their myth collapse under its own weight. And while Meghan tried to rebuild the fantasy with another phone call, another demand, Harry finally understood what the world already knew. They weren't victims anymore. They were the spectacle. And this time, no palace or PR team could save them.
Our children, Archie and Lily, are just 6 and 4 years old. Luckily, still too young for social media, but we know that day is coming.
Now, Meghan, the actress, of course, had to stick to the script. And so we had the hilarious, she's trying to talk about the need to protect children from social media, even though she's pimping out her own children wherever she can, causing these tensions.
The private jet denial wasn't a scheduling issue. It was a statement, deliberate, calculated, and louder than any tabloid headline. For years, Meghan and Harry had lived inside their own narrative, the misunderstood royals, the self-exiled saviors, the couple too authentic for the institution they abandoned. But that story depended on one thing, people still believing they were different. When the Humanitarian Awards refused their request, that illusion shattered. It was the industry's quiet way of saying what the public already whispered. The Sussexes no longer represented service. They represented spectacle. Inside the organizing committee, the choice was simple. How could an event built on humility justify lending a jet to the couple who turned every cause into a photo opportunity? Behind closed doors, one insider called it ethical housekeeping. They wanted sincerity, not a brand activation. The decision rippled beyond logistics. It signaled the end of an era. The Sussex brand, once powered by rebellion, had become everything it once opposed. Self-serving, performative, hollow. Meghan's calculated elegance could no longer hide the exhaustion beneath. Harry's moral outrage had started to look like envy. And as news of the denial quietly spread through Manhattan's PR circles, something remarkable happened. No one rushed to defend them. No frantic publicist emails, no sympathetic editorials, no loyal friends stepping in. The silence was deafening, and that silence spoke the truth.
She's got her arms flowing. She's really feeling her oats. Woman, please go back to California and be with your children and go and find a career other than just being desperate for attention every single day.
The humanitarian world had finally drawn a line. Service without sincerity is theater. Compassion without credibility is noise. And Harry and Meghan had become both. This wasn't exile, it was irrelevance, a fate far colder than any royal fallout. And in that quiet erasure, the message was clear. The world had moved on, but they hadn't. Their crowns were long gone, but so was the audience. Was the private jet denial a fair decision by the organizers, or just another public humiliation for the Sussexes? What do you think, guys? When the lights fade and the cameras turn away, most celebrities return to themselves. But Meghan and Harry no longer remember who that is. Every scandal, every headline, every public appearance has been stitched into a narrative so carefully controlled that even they've started to believe it. Meghan, once the actress, now plays the role of the misunderstood icon. Harry, the rebel prince turned professional victim. Together, they've built a palace of mirrors, one reflection for every audience they've tried to please. But here's the irony. The more they curate, the less real they appear. The compassion looks staged. The sincerity feels rehearsed. The vulnerability sells better than the truth ever could. What began as a mission to escape the crown became a crusade to replace it. And the jet denial wasn't their punishment, it was their reflection. The world finally held up a mirror that didn't flatter them, and they couldn't look away. For Meghan, the nightmare isn't rejection, it's obscurity. For Harry, it's realizing that the war he thought he was fighting against the monarchy was really against himself. The anger, the defiance, the endless crusade, it isn't rebellion anymore, it's routine. Once they stood for independence, now they stand for irony, preaching simplicity while chasing spectacle, claiming humility while demanding privilege, fighting for truth while scripting every frame of it. And that's the real tragedy. The crown didn't destroy them, the mirror did. Because when you spend years performing authenticity, you forget how to be it. And by the time they stepped into that SUV for the awards, the applause they'd been chasing had already died in the silence outside.
Harry and Meghan will likely have their titles stripped. I think they should have their titles stripped. What is she doing for the monarchy? She's going to fashion shows with this horrible outfit, which looks like a bed sheet. Looks like she's wrapped in toilet paper.
Do you think the world is finally tired of the royal drama, or will the Sussexes find a way to bounce back? I'm curious what you think. The fall of the Sussexes didn't happen in one night. It happened slowly, quietly, inside a room where no one dared tell them the truth. Their world has shrunk to a curated circle of assistants, PR managers, and advisors whose paychecks depend on agreement. Every headline they dislike is called a smear. Every failure is blamed on jealousy. They don't hear the criticism anymore, just the applause they hire. Meghan scrolls through coverage, hunting for validation like oxygen. When she finds a negative article, she treats it as proof of of persecution. When she finds praise, she reposts it as destiny. Every post, every photo, every cause becomes part of the same echo, polished, hollow, endlessly repeating. Harry fares no better. The man who once stood against the institution now hides behind another, the brand they built together. His rebellion has turned into repetition. Same speeches, same grievances, same ghosts. The sincerity has curdled into performance, and even he can feel the script wearing thin. Outside their mansion, the world keeps spinning. New stories, new scandals, new faces take their place. The crowds that once shouted their names have moved on to the next spectacle. But inside the Sussex echo chamber, the applause still plays, recorded, recycled, and increasingly faint. What they don't realize is that fame doesn't die in flames, it dies in echoes. It fades, layer by layer, until silence feels louder than the noise they once chased. And that silence is here, not imposed by the palace, not engineered by the press, but created by their own refusal to step out of the mirror and face the world as it really is. Because in the end, the Sussex story isn't about betrayal or bravery. It's about two people who mistook their own reflection for relevance. When the night finally arrived, New York moved as it always does, fast, indifferent, unforgiving.
The New York Times are finally realizing actually his wife might be a disaster tourist, but he is a disaster when it comes to charity, especially African charity, because he doesn't actually give a damn. For years and years and years, he used Africa because it was good for his PR.
The Humanitarian Awards began without delay. The red carpet rolled, the cameras flashed, and the Sussexes were nowhere to be seen. No jet sweeping through the skyline, no grand entrance, no curated spectacle, just a black SUV pulling quietly to the curb. Unannounced, unnoticed, unimportant. Inside the venue, the organizers smiled politely, the photographers looked past them, and the crowd barely stirred. For the first time in years, Meghan and Harry walked into a room that didn't revolve around them. No lens turned, no whispers followed. Their presence, once a command, had become an afterthought. The irony was surgical. They'd come to celebrate compassion, yet the only thing people felt toward them now was fatigue. The glamour looked forced, the smiles rehearsed, the aura gone. What had been built on rebellion and sympathy had curdled into arrogance and performance, and everyone could see it. Meghan's eyes scanned the room for cameras that weren't pointed her way. Harry stood beside her, expression blank, posture stiff, the prince who had escaped the palace only to find another cage built by his own choices. The silence between them said what headlines never could. They weren't feared, admired, or envied anymore. They were pitied. As speeches began, applause echoed for causes greater than celebrity. Their names weren't mentioned, their legacy not invoked. The humanitarian spotlight had moved on, and for once, it didn't look back. When they left, the city didn't notice. The streets were wet with rain. Their SUV disappeared into traffic, and the night swallowed them whole. Two silhouettes fading into a skyline that no longer cared. The denial of a private jet wasn't just logistics, it was symbolism. It marked the end of illusion, the death of entitlement, and the quiet burial of the Sussex myth. Maybe they'll tell the story differently. Maybe they'll spin it as injustice, or envy, or bad luck. But the truth is simpler. The world stopped clapping. You're watching Star Spotlight, where the truth hides between the headlines. If you want to see how this pattern began, watch our previous investigation. Meghan's first husband, Joe Giuliano, reveals why his family rejected Meghan, because every story of downfall starts with one illusion too many.